Hey guys, in this video I'm going to give you a walk around of my motorcycle, show you everything I've done to it. This is a 2014 Kawasaki Ninja 300, and as you can see it's set up as a dedicated track bike, and it's also set up for club racing. I've been racing this bike with CCS for the last couple of years, and I've done everything I can to try and make it as competitive as possible. So starting from the outside, you can see it's got a full Hot Bodies race fairing kit on it. And I've also got the DB Holders race fairing stay. That stay is all aluminum, and it's much lighter than stock. And the other cool thing about it is on this fairing stay, it lets you mount the dash directly to the fairing stay instead of using all that black plastic to hold the dash in place. So it lets you get rid of all that stuff around it. Also, while we're up here on the dash, you can see we've also got a gear position indicator on the bike and a Trail Tech thermometer, so I can keep track of my coolant temps. And then that, if you're wondering what that is a LED light wired to the fan switch. So I've got the radiator fan deleted off this bike since I don't need it for racing, but I did wire up a light so that way if it gets hot enough for the fans to come on, which would be 218, that light will come on instead and let me know that my bike's about to overheat. For controls, we got the Woodcraft clip-ons. These are a really good option for this bike. They're the right rise, so that way they get them as low as possible, but there's no clearance issues. I've also got the Vortex adjustable levers on the left and right side. Got a Motion Pro quick turn throttle kit. This is their Rev 2 throttle kit, and that's paired with a Motion Pro start stop switch. Also, if you notice, my bike is a keyless setup. I got the Woodcraft key switch eliminator harness. I got that paired with a driven keyless fuel cap, so I don't have to mess with the key anymore. And that's just one click to turn the ignition on, and then starter button. Moving down the bike, I got a set of tech spec tank grips, and for rear sets we're using the Hot Bodies MGP rear sets, and those are a little bit of a cheaper option, but they work pretty well. I haven't had any issues with them. For crash protection, I'm using the GB Racing engine covers. You can see this one's already done its job a little bit, so they work well. And then we've got Woodcraft frame sliders up there, and I can also say those do their job really well too. I've gotten to test those out a couple of times. I'm also using a set of extra long spools. They're called slider spools, and I would also consider those crash protection because they do stick out far enough to help keep your swing arm from dragging. For gearing, I've got a Vortex rear sprocket. That's a 44 tooth rear sprocket, and then I'm using the 14 tooth front sprocket, which on this year bike is stock. So if you've got a Ninja 300 and you're looking for gearing recommendations, 1444 is pretty good, or leaving it stock at 1442 is pretty good. I did have a 13 tooth on the front and a 42 on the back, and it's pretty good for acceleration, but it's a bit too short for most tracks. For suspension, I've got an Öhlins rear shock on there with the remote reservoir. If you're familiar with the Öhlins kit for this bike, they give you a bracket that mounts it that sticks out pretty far. I decided not to use that and just mount it directly to the frame. It's much better that way and keeps it from dragging if you crash on the left side. And then for the front, I've got just an Öhlins kit that is not cartridges. These are just preload adjusters, so you can set your sag, and then it comes with heavier fork springs, and then they recommend you change the fork oil to a little bit of a heavier weight. So not cartridges, that would be nice, but this setup does pretty well. I haven't had any complaints with it so far. For the brakes, that's definitely one thing. I've done as much as I can. The only thing I haven't done to the brakes is upgrade the master cylinder. Still using the stock Kawasaki master cylinder, and it does work okay. Some tracks with hard braking, you do kind of wish you had something with a little bit more power, but you can get by with the stock master. But I do have a Galfer steel braided line that goes straight to the caliper, so no ABS on this bike. And then I've got a Galfer floating wave rotor. Also using the Galfer sintered pads, and then running Maxima high temp racing fluid. It's like 600 degrees plus, something like that, so really high boiling point. And with this setup, I've never had any brake fade issues whatsoever. For the rear brakes, I've got a brake reservoir delete kit on the back, and then a Galfer steel braided line straight to the caliper. As far as any engine mods or power upgrades, I haven't really done much to this bike. Like I said, it's a club racing bike, so this would be super sport legal for CCS racing. That just means that they limit how much stuff you can do. So all I've done to it is a full exhaust system. These are Hindle exhaust headers paired with a Hot Bodies slip-on muffler. And then for the filter, I've just got a DNA racing filter in there, but the airbox is all stock, so that has not been modified. That keeps it super sport legal. And then I've got the ECU reflashed by MRP Motorsports. So I'll give you a little sound clip of that. Couple of other things worth mentioning to try and lighten the bike. I've got an anti-gravity lithium ion battery on it. It's the smallest one they offer, small case size battery, and that thing is less than a pound. So compared to the stock one, which is like 6 or 7 pounds, that gets rid of a whole lot of weight for not a lot of money. I've also gotten rid of everything I don't need. Like I mentioned, of course, all the street stuff is gone, but radiator fan is off, don't need that for racing. A lot of the mounting brackets and tabs throughout the frame that are not used for anything important, I've cut off to try and lighten it. And of course, everything else we mentioned, all the aftermarket stuff that I've put on it, you know, stuff that hasn't been deleted but just replaced with something better and lighter, has done a lot to get weight off the bike. So this bike as it sits with a full tank of gas is somewhere around 320 pounds, maybe 325. In race ready condition, I usually run it with like 2 gallons of gas in the bike, so in that state it's probably just over 300 pounds.